Thank you, and thank you for all staying. I know some folks had to try to rush to make East Coast flights. I don't know why they would do that. It's beautiful here. As I was introduced, Ted Shelton. I have been writing about AI for years. I was first introduced to OpenAI in 2020, but I'm not a pundit. I'm not an analyst. I'm an operator and an advisor. And so when I think about these issues and I write about these issues, I write about it from that frame of mind. You can subscribe to my newsletter on LinkedIn. It's called Infinite Future. And today what I'm going to do is a little bit like what I do in my newsletter. So in my newsletter, what I try to do is three things. The first thing I do is I try to cover what has happened in the past that we should be aware of, people, inventions, that has led to why we are where we are today. The second thing I do is I look at current things that are going on, not as news, right? So I'm not like Nathaniel, giving you sort of here's a summary of all the latest AI news. That's not the purpose. But rather look at things that are going on right now from the context of why are they important, what should we be doing about them, what should we be aware of, that is, where are we now? And then the third thing that I do is I talk about important issues that we should be thinking about the future. Both from the perspective of how is technology evolving, but also about core ethical, civilization level questions, and also individual questions that we should be asking about where this technology is taking us. So I'm going to try to, in the time I have with you today, I'm going to try to take you through those sort of three pieces of the specific topic of what is superintelligence. Let me start out by, and I'll use a couple of quotes to this, so hopefully this will make it amusing, but I'm sure some of you have heard this quote broadly attributed to Ernest Hemingway. It's actually about bankruptcy. He says, how does bankruptcy happen? Two ways, gradually and then suddenly. So I've stolen that from the perspective of saying, how has AI happened? And I think the same thing is true. It's actually a story that goes back 75 years, and if you haven't seen this wonderful movie, The Imitation Game, it's not particularly historically accurate, but it's terrifically entertaining, and there is a lot of useful historical information in it as well. But it tells the story of this fellow, Turing, who was the first to sort of at least write down this concept of could a machine think? And so his idea was to say there was a popular parlor game actually at the time where you would have a man in one room and a woman in another room, and the parlor game was while you're all sitting around laughing and drinking, you would send notes to each of the rooms, and the guests would all try to decide which one's the man and which one's the woman. The idea here was Turing was like, well, what if you had a human and a machine in each of these rooms? Could you get to a point where a machine could be indistinguishable from the human? And of course, that started off a whole set of thinking which has progressed for the last 75 years. I'm not going to tell you the entire history. We don't have time for that, but I think it is a very useful history, and that's why I write about it in my newsletter, and I encourage you to go back to all the old postings that I've done. There's all sorts of really interesting characters in this storyline. But I think what's really important to the story today about superintelligence is the change in velocity, right? So this has been happening sort of very gradually, but then suddenly, in the last, and so I mentioned being introduced to OpenAI in 2020, and GPT-2 at the time was available only sort of as a programming API, and maybe had, if you want to talk about it in human comparables, the intelligence of a toddler. So it wasn't that useful. It was really entertaining, right? And you could get it to spit back poems and talk like a pirate and do fun things. But it wasn't useful, right? And today, everyone in this room and all of the conference has been, hey, there are actually really useful applications of this. So something's changed really suddenly in the last 5 years. And in fact, in my view, as we talk about superintelligence, it is going to keep changing at an accelerating rate. So this graph, and I know you guys have been bored by a million graphs over the course of the last couple of days, so many that we can't keep track of. But note that this is a log scale. On the y-axis, the x-axis is time. And basically what we're looking at is the progression of intelligence in human terms, right? So there's sort of this attempt to be able to make this make sense to us as human beings by saying, well, what is it like if we make it comparable to a human? And so, back in 2020, it was a preschooler. GPT-3 comes out in 2023, or late 2022, and it's sort of an elementary school, maybe by 2023. And so this graph was actually created in 2023, and GPT-4 had just come out. And the person doing the analysis was actually working for OpenAI, so had access to it early and can say, hey, actually, these models have gotten to the point where they are capable of answering the kinds of questions you'd expect a smart high schooler to answer, which means they make a lot of mistakes and they don't necessarily know all the facts and they confuse things, but nonetheless, what amazing progress, right? And so as part of this analysis, then there was okay, well, where does this line lead? And there's a error bar there. How long is it going to take us to get to the automated AI research engineer so OpenAI doesn't have to pay $100 million to pay one guy? And then we're way off the chart. September 12th, 2024 is actually the human PhD holder equivalent. And what does that mean? It was a test called a GPQA. Diamond benchmark, which the machine is able to do at a human level. So already off the scale. GPT-5 is rumored to be being released in the next couple of weeks. And you can expect that there are things in the lab that actually exceed that. So by the way, never take whatever is actually available to you as the benchmark. Something else is much more advanced that is behind lock and key at the moment. And the point of this is, look, this scale up is accelerating. And it's actually accelerating even faster than the people building this stuff realize it's accelerating. And that's going to play an important role in how we think about superintelligence. So that's how we got here. But I do want to take a moment to talk about what we mean by intelligence, because I threw out that point that, hey, it's a toddler versus a high school student versus whatever. And I think the mistake that we often make, and when we think about intelligence, is we anthropomorphize. Well, that's natural. Like all of the intelligence we've encountered during our entire lives is human intelligence. And so we associate a whole bunch of other anthropomorphic qualities to that concept of intelligence. We think of that intelligence as having desires and interests and agency. And so we worry, are the machines going to kill us all? Are the machines going to take over? Or do they really have our interests at heart? Right? And what I'd like to disabuse you of is that anthropomorphic quality to intelligence. And so I've created at least a first hypothesis for thinking about a calculation around measuring intelligence. And I'll keep refining this and watch for my updates on my newsletter. But the basic point is, if you think about intelligence from a purely calculable perspective, it is some combination of how much information do you have available? And so machines now have much more information, petabytes of information, where we can't possibly access that. Maybe if you wandered into a great research library, there would be petabytes of information in that research library. But then that brings in the second term of the equation, which is how fast can you process that information? Because if I release you into a research library, good luck, right? Good luck even finding the one book that you want to find. I remember trying to do that as a graduate student. Like, it was usually checked out with the one I wanted. So then that speed of processing plays an important role in how intelligent a system is. But then the most important term, and you can, for those of you that are math majors, you can sort of see how I've structured this equation, that there's sort of a declining utility of the quantity of information and the speed of processing. And the most important term becomes, how is this system designed? Is it fit for purpose for the outcomes? So if I want to generate an image of a person, do they have 6 fingers? That's not really fit for purpose. 5 fingers would be more fit for purpose. 8 fingers for sure is outside the realm of human experience, right? So how well does it actually achieve the objective that you want? And so if you think about those 3 characteristics, those are the things that are measurable as intelligence. And the reason I want to put this out there is to say, now when we get into the where we are today and where are we going, when we talk about these concepts of artificial general intelligence and superintelligence, I want you to try to leave behind all of the anthropomorphic qualities. I want you to just think about the calculation capability of these machines as the measure of intelligence. Okay, second quote. How many are fans of William Gibson? Yeah, if you're not, you should be. Amazing science fiction writer. And this was actually something he said in an interview with the BBC. The future is already here. It is just even unevenly distributed. And let me give you an example of that, because I don't think this is the only period where we have experienced really rapid change and where that change has not been well distributed. So the picture on the left is Easter morning, 1900. And if you look closely at the picture, which it's hard to do from where you're sitting, basically everything in that picture is a horse-drawn carriage. And only 13 years later, same day of the year, same street, it's all automobiles, right? 13 years, amazing transformation, New York City. However, that wasn't true across the nation, right? It actually took a really long time for automobiles to spread across the entire country, much less the world. But you see that relentlessly, the automobile did start to take off. There's some bumps, and the poor horse has been relegated to being, entertainment. We don't really use it anymore in any useful way. Maybe the Amish do, so forgive me if you're Amish. But this change did actually then spread across the entire country and world. Now, my point of this is this kind of change is happening already. The idea of artificial general intelligence, I think one of the mistakes we make when we talk about both AGI and superintelligence is we think of it as a particular moment in time when a particular thing is going to have manifested itself in the universe. And the reality is, actually, it's already manifesting itself. It's just unevenly distributed. So that's where we are today. So for example, Waymo. How many people have ridden in a Waymo? Everyone. Okay, good. I'm glad, because San Francisco needs all of your tourist dollars. We're trying to recover from all the terrible things that have happened over the last couple of years. So please keep coming back and riding the Waymos. 250,000 paid robo-taxi rides. This was actually, this isn't even current data. This is April data, right? So we're looking at actually Waymo passing Uber now. So the pink line is Lyft. It's already passed Lyft in April. It's getting close to passing Uber now. It's already passed taxis. I mean, taxis, of course, have been destroyed by the ride-sharing networks already. And it's now coming to every city in the country. They're doing test Waymo drives in New York City, even where the unions are pretty strong. So we'll see how that goes in terms of how many Waymos are burnt to the ground. But I will tell you, as a regular rider in Waymos, I love it. And I love it for three reasons. One, I get in the car and I don't worry about the driver, because I've had and we all have had the Lyft driver or the Uber driver who is speeding and reckless, and you're like, I'm not in a hurry. And he's like, well, I am. And like, but I'm paying. And the Waymo's never in a hurry, right? Waymo obeys all traffic laws. And so that's sort of the second thing is, like, I can get in the car and it knows the destination and I just ignore it. I get on my phone, I'm talking, I'm doing email, whatever it is. I don't even worry about, like, what route is it taking? Am I really going to get to my destination? And then third, it's cheaper. For a while there, they were saying, oh, you can tip your Waymo. And I'm like, why am I tipping a robot? So this is a great example today of the future is already here but unevenly distributed, because this is a part of my daily life. It's my norm now, and it isn't for the rest of the world, the rest of the country certainly. But it is there, and my third part of this discussion then is to say, well, where is this going then? So that's where we are today. We already have a thing which, if you think about the taxi driver as having a set of skills that is human intelligence, we have artificial intelligence that can do what the taxi driver does, right? So that's an example of where artificial general intelligence already exists today, but we are in a period of exponential change. If you don't know Ethan Mollick, I strongly recommend go find him. You can find him on LinkedIn. He posts very prolifically there. He also writes a blog called One Useful Thing. He is a professor at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania, and he has been engaged with AI longer than most academics knew it existed. He tests everything, writes about it extensively, thinks specifically about the application of AI in business, so you should all actually really care about what he has to say. But I think this is sort of a brilliant framing, right? There are two ways to react to exponential change. too early or too late, right? Because the problem with exponential change is you're sitting there and you actually don't exactly know when the takeoff point is, and you might be sitting there thinking, hey, well, it's not really much. Oh, wait, it just happened. And so you're much better off looking at the future from the perspective of saying, I know I'm going to get there. I don't know when, but it's probably sooner than I think, so I better start now. And I think that's been a resounding message throughout the entire session yesterday, today, and the day before, that hopefully you've all absorbed. And one of the things I would observe is you are all at the forefront of your organizations, and I say that because you're here, right? And so the fact that you're here means you actually care about what's happening with this future that we are all rapidly finding ourselves in the middle of. You're going to leave here and you're going to have post-event depression, because you're going to go back into your organizations with all the other people who are still sitting there going, what? What is this stuff? I don't understand. Can you bother me about it another day or maybe another year? And I love the comment that was up on the stage earlier today about how far behind the rest of the world is. I mean, so I feel like I live in Silicon Valley. I'm right at the wellhead. The oil's pumping out of the ground. And then I leave the Bay Area and I go around the country and I see people filling their cars with gasoline that have no idea where the gasoline came from. And then I go to Europe, and Europe is still using horse and buggy. And they talk about how they want to actually have AI. And I started talking with leaders there in France and in England about their aspirations. The aspiration of the joint collaborative industry plus government workforce in the UK to bring GPU compute to the UK is that they want to have 175,000 GPU supercluster in the UK by, wait for it, 2027. Okay, Elon Musk established his XAI Colossus computer in Memphis in 4 months. It has 100,000 GPUs. That's already up and running. So, you start looking at this and you're like, you guys actually don't understand what's happening here, right? They are. So you're going to go back and you're going to talk to all these other people in your organization. And so one of the things that I hope you are able to do is to convince them that, hey, this is actually changing at an exponential pace. And so it's not okay to wait a year. It's not okay to wait a day. We actually need to be doing stuff now. So let's talk about, and this is, by the way, the worst thing for a prognosticator to do, right? It's really easy to get up on stage and say, like Jason did, I won't pick on him too much, but he was a great act. I loved it. It was very humorous. But he did the easy thing. He said, oh, here's the stuff that's going to happen in the next year, right? And I love that Peter challenged him and said, actually, let's talk about the next 10 years. And you can see how well he dodged that, too. Because it's actually really hard to talk about what's happening specifically with any sort of length of time. But I'm going to try to do that today. So I'm going to talk about, first of all, the rest of this decade, and then I'm going to make some comments about the next decade. So I want to talk about I call this augmented general intelligence. Now, mostly you'll hear people say artificial general intelligence. But the reason I emphasize the word augmented is because I do think that the period of the next 5 years is going to be about human-machine collaboration. And the thing that we don't know, just to anthropomorphize it for a minute, we don't know how to manage machines. We know how to manage people, right? So if I have a task in my organization that we've been doing, and I have people doing it, and I want to have more people doing it, I know how to hire someone and train them and manage them to do that task. I don't know how to do that with a machine. And so there is an enormous challenge for all of your organizations, and for us as a planetary species, to figure out how to introduce this new intelligence into our workforce. And that topic came up a number of times. People talked about the issues of HR and how much it's about a people change issue rather than a technology change issue. And I would say that more so than any technology you've introduced in your organization, this is even more problematic because it's not standing still. So it isn't as if it's like, oh, we need to do a change. We're in state A, and now we're going to move to state B, and then we're done. No, it's going to be wave after wave after wave of change. As I said, GPT-5 is going to be introduced in the next couple of weeks. And then you're going to have another thing and another thing. And every day when you wake up, you're going to read the paper, and you're going to be like, wait, what just happened? What's possible now? And so you have to build a very different kind of resilient workforce that is constantly experimenting. Ethan Mollick actually has a really good post on this I encourage you to look for. He talks about how the organizations that he works with that are doing this the best have three things. First of all, they have leaders who are willing to dive in and try to understand this and be supportive, provide the protection for people to make mistakes, make that okay, provide the funding to make people be able to run faster, to try different things. So you need that leadership buy-in. And we saw some of that with the board members that were up here. I thought that was a fantastic example of leadership saying, yes, we need to lean in as leaders and encourage our organizations to do this. Secondly, you need what Ethan Mollick calls the crowd. And what he means by the crowd is you need your employees experimenting with this. They're the ones who are actually in the trenches doing the work. And by the way, the work is being done very differently in reality than you think it's being done by your standard operating procedures documentation. And so the only way you're really going to be able to implement these technologies in the real world, in the way that your work is actually getting done in your organization, is to have people actually doing it. And part of that crowd then is, how do you recognize, reward, how do you help people share the things that they discover? And so what's the platform for experimentation that you're going to give your employees to do the work they're doing today, but in new ways? But then the third piece is also really important, which is what Ethan Mollick calls the lab. Because what you also need is you need some group of people in your organization that are taking whatever is the bleeding edge of this technology and in a safe way experimenting with your business's problems with that technology. And actually the most valuable thing that those people in your lab can do is to try to build things that honestly they know are not going to work. Right? They're going to push the envelope of the technology and try to build something that will fail. But what is important is that they learn how it failed, so that they know how to actually, because again, it's wave after wave of change. It's not yes, it can be done, or no, it can't be done. It's when can it be done? And being able to know what is the metric or the milestone or the technology that I need to be watching for to know when it can be done means that then you are agilely jumping in and doing it before your competition is doing it. So those three components. But all of what we do in the next 5 years is going to be about how do we actually have humans and machines working together to accomplish tasks. And what I want to scare you with now is what happens next. So let's talk about superintelligence. So artificial general intelligence is generally used as a way of saying, hey, we have a machine that basically can do anything or think or respond to any question that a human can respond to at least as well as a human can respond to it. The idea of superintelligence is that it is substantially better than any human at everything. Substantially better. And this isn't, again, this is not one point in time. This is going to be a moving target. It's also going to be unevenly distributed. It's going to be in labs. It's going to be in government labs as well, by the way, in terms of actually fulfilling the let me scare you part. It's going to be in control of militaries, the US government for sure, the Chinese government for sure, who knows how many other governments. And it is going to be able to process more information faster and be designed to have more fit-for-purpose outcomes than anything that we've ever seen in existence. And one of the reasons it's going to be able to do that is it's going to be programming itself. We actually have a whole bunch of examples. Ryder, May's company, who you all saw, they already are experimenting with their AI, rewriting their own AI to improve it. Right? That is already happening today. They've published papers on this. And they're one of the people that are open about it. I'm for sure thinking that Gemini has a whole bunch of AI that's writing AI, and so does OpenAI, and so does Anthropic, and we can go down the list, right? And so the interesting question is, if I'm Mark Zuckerberg, and I say I'm going to pay $100 million for the most brilliant AI researcher because I need to capture that talent to be able to have the innovation get ahead. What if I have a machine that is as brilliant as that one researcher? And that machine, of course, can work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, does not ask for $100 million. Well, maybe in compute it does. But then I can also say, hey, I don't have to have one brilliant AI researcher. I can have 1,000 brilliant AI researchers. And they're all then attacking the problems of how do I actually take this to the next level. And so superintelligence is also about exponential improvement of these models. And so I think the set of questions as leaders that we should be asking is, first of all, I think you can ask the question, how far does the current technology take us in terms of getting to twice as intelligent as a human, 4 times as intelligent, 100 times as intelligent? How can this particular set of technologies get us there? But then I think the second question that we can ask is, given the application of this technology to improving the technology, does that actually relieve the anxiety about can we do it? But then we also then have to wrestle with the anxiety of, wait, what if we actually do it? Every single one of your jobs is over. You're all done, right? Superintelligence can replace every single one of us, right? That was one of the comments from a CEO's letter. AI is coming after your job, my job, all of our jobs. I don't know how it's going to go, but we're all out of work, right? Except I would argue, and so let me close on this before I take a couple of questions, that there are 3 really important things that as a species that we should hang on to and make sure that as we design these systems, as we deploy these systems, that we hang on to as things that we want human beings to do. The first one is personal relationships, right? I have a daughter. I was talking to somebody else here, has a daughter. We were exchanging stories about our daughters going away to college. Like, a machine's never going to have a daughter. A machine might say, oh, I have a daughter, and I know all these stories about what daughters do, right? And make it up, right? But that's not real. That isn't actually creating the cohesion as a society that we need for us to be able to evolve as a species together, right? That has to happen human to human. We need to design the systems, whether it's a sales process or it's a coaching process. You know, I'm a ski instructor in the winters. You know, that human to human experience on the ski slope is so important to somebody having that light bulb come on and understand how they can use their body differently to succeed as a skier. We need those human-to-human interactions. We should make sure we design our systems so that we retain that. And also that we design our education systems to train our kids, focus them on understanding interpersonal relationships. Number 2, creativity. So we had this great talk just now about IP and how if you use machines, you may not have intellectual property rights. And so we know machines are great at creation. That is, they're good at the mechanical part of moving the pencil across the page or putting the paintbrush down the canvas or creating the moving image, but they don't direct it. They don't say, I had this real experience in the world yesterday morning where I saw a hot air balloon out over the valley, and my grandson loves hot air balloons, and I would have loved to express that experience visually. And I could have used AI to express my human lived experience, right? But it's how do we take that human lived experience and we use our creativity with a new set of tools, with a new AI set of tools, but let's have humans be the creative agents. And I think the creative agency can apply as well to things like drug discovery or other areas of human endeavor where we want humans to direct what the machines are going to do, decide what the machines are going to do. And that leads me to the last of the 3, which is accountability. Because it's okay for us to say, for example, in the Waymo, yes, I'm relying upon the Waymo to make the right decisions when it gets to a stop sign or when a mom pushes a baby carriage out in front of the Waymo and it needs to stop suddenly. I'm counting on it to make the right decisions, but I don't want to cede the decisions to the machine. I want humans to understand why it made the machine it made and be able to adjust the algorithms so that it's making decisions that are aligned with human outcomes. And so if you all go away and think about how you're going to deploy AI in the next 5 years and then be ready for superintelligence, where superintelligence will come into your workforce and be an independent entity that is doing real work, independent of humans, where even humans are learning from the AI. And by the way, this isn't something that we haven't experienced, right? Chess is a great example where the first time somebody lost to chess was Garry Kasparov at the grandmaster level. And then Garry Kasparov started a whole program where humans and chess and machines would play together and they could outperform a machine alone. But now machines are performing at a level that it's incomprehensible to humans, right? And so we have to be in the seat as a species, though, of saying, I'm not going to allow it to become incomprehensible. So I will stop there. Hopefully I've scared you. Hopefully you also believe that this is happening and you need to act now.